Each year, Microsoft Research hosts hundreds of influential speakers from around the world, including leading scientists, renowned experts in technology, book authors, and leading academics, and makes videos of these lectures freely available.
Go ahead and welcome Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson used to work directly with me in the DPE group, and he recently abandoned us and moved to Ad SDK, and now he is an expert in the way that the Ad SDK works. He's going to share that with us today. So without further ado, let's welcome Michael Johnson. MJ, thanks.
How you guys doing? Cool. All right, so expert is stretching it because we're learning something new every day because people are pushing the limits on what our Ad SDK could do today. So we're constantly making changes and getting feedback. So feedback is welcome. So I kind of want to just talk about the Ad SDK. How many of you guys are using it today? I know you are. How is it going for you so far? What are you looking to get from today? Because you're here and you're using it, so I'm just curious.
My fill rate is really, really low, meaning there's not always an ad available to serve. And so I wonder if it's a config thing or there's some techniques for kind of bumping that up.
Okay, fill rate. And there was someone else in the back that raised their hand that was using the Ad SDK. What are you looking to get today?
Sometimes I don't get any ads. I don't know if it's a fill rate thing or because I'm not seeing the default Bing that I used to see in the wire.
Okay.
It's just plain,
All right, so we will talk about that. So let's just kind of jump into this. I got a couple demos to kind of just talk about implementation, talk about some of the ad experiences, and talk about some of the sizes because I didn't know where people's skill sets were at with the Ad SDK if people knew it. So it's kind of like an introduction all the way. And some of you guys things may have to go offline with. All right. So the reason we at Microsoft are investing in advertisement because the industry is going to get to a $10 billion business. And so we still have a lot of work. We're new on Windows 8. Windows 8 came out in October. There are some things we haven't implemented yet that we will have on a roadmap to kind of make our advertisement platform even better. Considering that Windows 8 is new, our advertisement SDK kind of came out with that. Although we leveraged a lot of experience from phone, we actually are looking to do a lot of different things with Windows 8 because Windows 8 give us a lot more real estate so we can create some unique experience, and I'll kind of show some of those. It's easy to use, it's free, and it's a simple process to implement. And then you can leverage our platform is what we would like you to do. There are other platforms out there that you could use. If you already have relationships with some of those platforms, you could use those on Windows 8. We actually deliver better experiences and ad experiences. We still got work to do on those, and we're working on that. One, our advertisement SDK, I'm sure you guys saw this. You can monetize your app. What we do, that's I think is unique, and kind of answer some of your questions. We try to work with top 500 advertisers because we want to deliver quality advertisement, which if we deliver you quality advertisement, we're delivering you higher CPMs per impressions. We don't want to see like, hey, go lose weight, dieting pills, or come here and get your lost weight pills and things like that. So we try to stick with like name brands, high quality advertisement. The other thing we work on is we don't want the user to leave your apps. So we try to create immersive, engaging advertisement experience that keep the user within your app. So when they actually click through and actually engage one advertisement, they're still in your app and they can use the back button to go back to your app, which helps with your impression level and also help with engagement. And then we try to make them immersive, great experiences. The other one is quickly to enable. It's a few lines of code to add for HTML or XAML. So the way it works is once you decide, say, I'm going to monetize my advertisement or monetize my app using advertising, you actually go to download the SDK. You can use some of the test codes that we have to kind of test your app out. You go to Pub Center, sign up, and it's really that easy to implement. Then you publish it to the store, and then you start tracking your information. How we pay, because there's a lot of different ways people pay. They pay based on click-throughs. Right now, we're doing it just per impression. So the way to think of that is it's 1,000 impressions. So if we go work a deal out with an advertiser, you say, I'm going to pay $2, $10, or $20 for every 1,000 impressions. If a user is creating 1,000 impressions, you get $10 or $2, whatever that impression is. We're not paying for click-throughs right now. So we'll talk about how that works when you actually impressions show up on the screen. Now, the key thing is, and I thought I looked at your app. You didn't have ratings. Because of Child Online Protective Privacy Act, we don't advertise in apps if you have your apps are under 12. So we can't do advertisement. So it has to be 12 plus for your apps to use our advertisement platform. And then there's the 70%, 30% split. So based on the net profit that you make from advertisement, you, the developer, get 70%, we'll get 30%. And of course, if you go over to 25,000, that changes to where you get 80%, we get 20%. And it is net, not gross. Go.
I set my app at 7 plus, right? But I'm seeing ads. So where are those ads from?
So let's take that one offline. You shouldn't see ads.
Okay.
Because when it goes to the store, your rating and everything should block you from seeing ads. So we should talk about that if you're seeing ads in your app, because you really should. Are you actually getting numbers and dollar signs in Pub Center?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll say that's a bug.
One question. I am new to the app development in Windows Phone. So you use a couple of terms like impressions. How do you define an impression? Is it just...
So we're going to talk about that later. So let me just be clear. This is strictly going to be a Windows 8 advertisement. Windows 8 Ad SDK is different from Windows Phone Ad SDK. Only focus on Windows 8 Ad SDK. If you have questions about the Windows Phone Ad SDK, I'll kind of help you, but I don't want to go down that path because it is different. We deliver different experiences, and the whole process is a little bit different. The problem is we did take a lot of things they did, like we integrated everything in the Pub Center. So there's going to probably be some changes coming to where you can actually see the differences between Windows Phone and Windows 8 clearer in Pub Center.
At what point does the split change from 70-30 to 80?
Once you hit $25,000 in revenue. So some of the things to consider for your advertisement is, one, what I'm talking about is downloading the Ad SDK, consideration for integrating the Ad SDK into your app so it's not intrusive, adding a few lines of code, signing in the Pub Center, registering the Pub Center, and then setting your ad units and to sell. So how many, so it was only 3 or 4 people. How many people actually have apps already published to the store? And those who are not using Ad SDK, how are you currently monetizing your app in the store? Paid?
Paid app.
So are you doing advertisement first on the free, then you convert into paid? So you have 2 apps, one advertisement, one paid. Anyone else?
Purchases, if you want to remove the ads, on the slide I said remove the ads, you click on that, you pay, then I turn off the ads.
So it's free with advertisement, and then you make them pay if they want to remove advertisement. Do they get any additional functionality?
No.
It's just removing advertisement?
And that's literally all I put on the link, remove ads.
Okay.
And I've actually had like about 10% of the people do.
Okay. I think I saw a hand over here. Okay. All right, so what we're going to talk about is how easy it is to implement the Ad SDK, the different ad unit sizes. What we tried to do, I hate PowerPoint, but I know I had to do this. So here's the ad unit sizes. We have, when you go into Pub Center, you're going to see 7 ad unit sizes. What we try to do is, there's this organization called IAB, and they have standards for ad unit sizes. And so you will see some of these similar sizes, whether you go and do stuff on Apple iOS, if you do stuff on Android, and things like that. So there's IAB standards. And so the good thing is a lot of these IAB standards fit very well within the Windows 8 design elements, like the grid. So we have the 250 by 250, we have the 300 by 250. We even have some banners that get lined up with your margins. So we tell you to think about your ad unit sizes. So I'm going to pause here because I don't want to spend too much time on PowerPoint. I want to make this interactive. How it works is each ad unit that you create is a placement in your app. There's a combination, right? The first thing you do when you go into Pub Center, God, I guess I'll stick to PowerPoint because I forgot people are watching and they're recording. The additional side is 728 by 90. So when you're thinking about doing your advertisement, that's what we want you to think about. We want you to think about all of the different ad sizes you have and then how to place that in your app. So I'm going to show a couple of examples of some of the ad experiences we do and how they'll look within your app. All right. So this is a demo app that we have to kind of just show the ad experiences. And as you can see here, we have different ad experiences. We have a full screen image, and I can use the 160 by 600 anchor. I could use a 350 by 250, and that experience still could be served in the anchor size. So from a developer or a design perspective, all you have to think about is integrating real estate of your app using one of the ad anchor sizes. We take care of all of the experiences, the advertisements that's going to get sent to you. You, as the designer developer, you do not have to worry about that.
Does this happen in the store?
No, this is actually, they was going to try to publish it. Let me confirm if it actually went through or not. But it's not a full app, it's just a demo app for us. But it'd be great for you guys to see. So for example, if I click here, this is the Fabricam Man's Dailies app. And so when you think about this app, you can see here's the advertisement. It's the banner 160 by 600. One of the things you'll notice about the banner, it kind of fits with the content. The margins and the content line up. It's not out of place, and it kind of feels like it's just part of the application versus advertisement. And so once again, when I click on this advertisement, you can see the silhouette behind. I guess you can kind of see it maybe. But you can see I didn't really leave the app. I didn't go to a browser. I didn't open up some Internet Explorer or Chrome browser. I stayed within the app, and I can see the full screen image. So advertisers like this. Although we're not paying through click-through, we have more interaction, and there's more recall memory. So what we mean by recall memory is, can you recall that advertisement that you saw in the app? And we almost have a 98% recall percentage. So advertisers like that. The only time I leave this page is if I click here and go learn more at the bottom. It would then open up a browser and take me to forward. If I click the back button, I'm back at the app. Now we talked about impressions. So when I loaded this app, that's one impression because it's right on the screen. So an impression happens. So if I had a grid and I was scrolling and panning left to right, when it's 60% on the screen, it's counted as an impression. So like I left the app and I clicked through the advertisement. When I went back out and I went back, that's going to be another impression. Questions on that? All right, so that's just one of the experiences. The other one is we have like full screen video. Again, we have the 250 by 250 anchor. If I click, you can see, again, the Fabricam Man's Daily. And you can see how I integrated it within my grid. And I just kind of pretty much made an interstitial within the content of the grid. You can see it's the Cobra. So once I click again, you get the different experience. And I have the full screen video. So clicking isn't the impression. Me going to that app is the impression. So like right now I'm in the app and I click back, that's going to count as another impression. So if again, this is just mock-up. If I scrolled over and then I scroll back, that'll count as an impression. So it's pretty much the impression I wanted. So think of it this way. Someone playing a game, and we're going to get into this. Someone playing a game and they just sitting on your screen like solitaire and you have an advertisement at the bottom. People's like, okay, well, they're not moving, they're not doing anything. How does it count as an impression? We have what we call ad refresh. And so we'll talk about that, how the ad refresh works. And that's how, if you're just sitting in a game. So games are the ones that are very successful because you get someone just in your app, playing in your app, and that you have the advertisements just sitting somewhere. As long as they're playing in your game, you're going to have impressions counted. So like if I just sat on the screen, I'll be counting impressions. And that's because of the ad refresh. And we'll talk about that. Again, we don't pay for click-through yet. It's strictly impressions. So those are some of the experience we work on. So we have an internal team that takes a lot of these creatives to create these advertising experiences. The other one we have like full screen and video. So right here you can see again how I just took one of the ad units and it integrated into my content. It's not distracting the user. It just flows with the content, and when they click on it, they'll get one of those ad experience. This one actually been acting funny. It worked that time. And so you can see I got the picture in the video. And so again, these are experiences that you're not going to get with some of the other advertisements. What you typically would get from them is a banner, and you click, and it opens up a browser like this. So now I'm out of the app, and I can go back, and now I'm back into my regular app. I'm not going to click through all the experiences. I'll show you. Most of you guys probably seen the hotspot ones because that's one of our test ad ones. I actually like this one, so I just showed the ad rotator real quick. And so it's almost like an app within an app. And that's what our ad experiences are. So that's what's so unique about that. So when you think about an advertiser and you think about what an advertiser's thinking, because there's two teams that we have. So my job is to work with you guys to implement that real estate. We have a sales team, a national worldwide sales team that go try to partner with Ford, Nissan, I'm gonna even say Adobe, whoever else want to do advertisement, because you guys are the supply, and we say we have all of these advertiser apps that you can actually put advertisement in. We go to the advertisers, they're the ones that demand certain ad anchors, certain type of apps, certain categories, because what they want. So for example, like you go work with Rolex Watch, what do you think they're gonna advertise in? They don't want to advertise into your game. They're gonna advertise into their target audience, which would probably be Wall Street Journal, things like that, right? So that's what we work with, and that's how we work with different advertisers try to sell your space in your app. Questions on that?
Do they sell specific apps?
No, we do not sell specific apps.
Okay.
So I'm not on the sales side, so I can't speak for them. I was just kind of trying to tell you how CPMs, how someone decide, hey, I'm gonna buy this advertisement, they launch a campaign. But I can tell you they don't sell specific apps.
Is there any kind of statistics or like what is the best ad to use to get the highest CPM within the same pixel size? So if you have a 250 by 250, does it just vary based on the market at the time? If an image is going to be better, or a full screen image, or a video, they all taking the same size. Is there a way of telling which is going to be the best CPM rate, or are you going to run into fill rate issues? It might be better to actually have 3 different ads and then have your app change them out periodically, like every half hour, change the ad type on that space there. If that's going to be better or not effective.
Okay, so I'm gonna try to restate that, to try to break it up, because you asked like 5 different questions. And since we're recording, I want to try to make sure I answer it. So the first one that I heard is, and not ads, it's ad anchors. So again, you don't control the ad, you control the real estate. So his first question was about placement on choosing the right ad unit size. So when you go into Pub Center, you have 7, 8 different ad unit sizes. So his question is like, do we have data to say the 160 by 600 is going to give me better CPM versus the 300 by 250? Correct? That's the first question. I would say it's kind of hard to say, because advertisers are kind of fickle with what they want, right? Most people, considering how we deliver our experiences, so if you notice, if I stay in this app, you can see here I have the carousel at a 160 by 600, and I also have just the image by the full screen image, 160 by 600. And you can see here I have the full screen video at a 250 by 250. That's nothing stopping me from serving that same full screen video in the 160 by 600. So the ad experiences that they're paying for, we could literally serve between all of the ad anchors. So there's kind of a balance of saying what they're willing to pay for. Based on IAB standards, and and IAB standards go across all kind of advertisement, online, web, iOS, and things like that. So based on a lot of those based on that, advertisers do have like a consistent way of saying we're going to purchase this. And so that's why you'll see some ad experiences show up in the 250 by 250 and some show up in 300 by 250, because what they're typically buying in the past, right? And so that's a mindset that we kind of got to change, because what we have done, we have changed how advertisement work, right? Typically, it's just not your text banner click to advertisement. We're actually giving you unique experiences. And so that's going to take us time to kind of ramp that up. And we haven't ramped up to the 500 advertisers, so we still got to do some of those things. The second question you asked, so does that kind of answer it? The second question, I think I kind of got lost, but the second question was about, can you place a lot of different ad units in your app and kind of rotate them out?
Yeah, like unload one and load
yes.
Another one.
So we'll talk about that, and the answer is yes. But we'll talk about that, because I'll show you some of the things that you can capture, especially in the no ad scenario and fill rates issues. Because it's hard to get a 100% fill rate, so the chances of having a no ad will happen. Or if you have an offline experience where your app isn't connected, you won't get an ad. So we'll kind of talk about that, so hold that thought. So since you brought that up, though, I do want to show, like, I got the 250 by 125 here where I could do the anchor ad. As you can see here, it fits in right here. If I click it, I get the pop-out experiences. So again, I can have different things in the 250 by 150. If you use one of the test codes, you can see this same type of experience. is in a 300 by 250 and also in, I think, a 160 by 600. So that kind of helps that. And I think you had a third question.
Generally, like if you're using tech or image-only ads, is it generally that the larger ads are going to give a higher CPM, or is it just kind of varied? Because my experience was very varied. That like one day the large banner ad would be getting more than the 250 by 250, and then the next day the 250 by 250 was getting more.
So I won't say it's based on size. I say it was based on creative and experiences. So you can see, like me being immersed in an ad rotator experience, advertisers are going to pay more for that because it's more creative. For me to just take an image and put it together, that's cheap for them to do. So they're not going to pay high CPM for that. For me to do one of these experiences to where, if I go back, I'll just show you this one. For me to do this here experience, the carousel, they had to take a lot of their digital image and then really create a carousel. This is different than just an image, right? And so I got pictures and I have video within this advertisement. So this is definitely a higher CPM than just your banner ad. Whether your banner ad was like a 700 by 700 or whatever size versus this is higher CPM.
The size generally just kind of depends on what the market's at the time, but the more immersive ad styles that have videos and full screen images, those generally do give a higher CPM than the straight image ads.
Yes, then the ones that just jump you off to the web, definitely, yes. Any, go.
So, can I control what type of ad I get? I want only video versus...
No, you cannot. If we could do that, we'd all be millionaires right now. I'll just be honest.
Let's say I have a YouTube app and I don't want to have like displays, I would like to have video ads there because it's a video app, right? So how do I control that my preference is to get video ads?
With our ad SDK, you can't. So let me just restate your question just to make sure. So you want to, all right, there's two different things. So there's ad unit sizes. So I want you to think of like an apartment building, right? You go get this 3-bedroom apartment, right? So I'm the guy who owns the building. I'm giving you a 3-bedroom apartment. It's empty. That's what you're giving us. You're giving us an empty space, whatever size you chose. Then now, so if I'm an advertiser and I say I want to advertise in that, we're going to serve up those experiences, whether it's the video and picture experience, or if it's a full screen image, or if it's the rotator, or it's the hotspot that jumps you off and have you purchase stuff through e-commerce. We're going to control what we send you because it's the advertisers who paying us to give them so many impressions on whatever that campaign is that they're running, right? Now, if you step outside of the box and you say, okay, I'm going to use Microsoft Ad SDK, I'm going to use, they say, Ad Tech or Ad Duplex or something like that where you can promote other people out, then from that perspective, what you control is which ad engine you're going to render an ad with. You don't control the experience within our Ad SDK, right? Just like with Google and everyone else, you're not going to really control that unless you got your own sales team and you're buying your own advertisement, then you can serve whatever you want, right? So that's you doing first-party ad serving, meaning you are the first party. You're going out making deals with Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Nike, and you're serving your own stuff. But if you take that 250 by 250 and you have these relationships with all these other ad providers, you could build logic in your app, but you got to think about the user and the user experience. But you could build logic in your app. That's nothing stopping you to saying, my first chair advertisement is going to be Microsoft Ad SDK. If I get the no ad, I'm going to reclaim that space, either put content in it, or I'm going to put a static banner ad, or I'm going to go to some other ad network and bring another one in, right? So that you control. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? All right. So let's talk about design considerations. We have do's and don'ts. And so to your point, and this is where design come in handy, and when you think about your user, you think about the overall experience of your app. There's a couple things. You built the app for one. You built the app. The first reason you built the app, I'm assuming, to make money, right? You thought like, okay, this is something that people are going to use and people are going to need. In order for you to make money, there's a couple things got to happen. No matter which way you choose to monetize your app, you got to make sure it's a great user experience, and you got to make sure your user's not offended or your user's not in, they got to be impressed, and you want them continuously using your app. So when you think about advertisement, you need to have that same mindset as how can I get great reviews and get 1 million people downloading? Because the more people download your app, the more impressions. I don't care if that impressions is 20 cents for CPM up to $50 per CPM. If you got one person, you're not going to make any money. If you got 1 million people, 20 cents start adding up, right? So you kind of got to think about that. So people get caught up and like, well, my CPM low. Well, what's your download? So when he brought up analytics, he was right on. How are people using your apps? So I encourage you to look at reviews, look at your analytics, and your analytics is going to also tell you the most critical thing, where to place your ads. Where are people spending the most time in your app? Because people say, well, I'm not getting any money. Okay, where did you put your ad? If your ad's over here and they never go in there, you're not going to get a lot of impressions. But you got 1 million downloads, but no impressions because of where you place your ad. So you got to think about that. When you're thinking about all those things, we don't want you to lose the quality that you put on your app. We don't want you to lose the design that you put in your app. So we want you to think about those things. So if you know right out of the back that you're going to be doing advertisements to make your money, we want you to think about that at your wireframe stage all the way to building your app. How this is going to fit into my app? How do I think users are going to be using my app? Now, analytics is going to drive more of that after your app is in, and that's going to take you to a V2 of kind of placing things around, right? So we want you to think about that. And like I said, we built a lot of things for layouts. So when you think about advertisement, you can see, again, we put the flight app, and you can see how we lined it all up. So everything actually fits with my content. It's not like up above and then my content's down. Everything is margined correctly. It's all sitting in together. And this is a nice experience. Again, if I'm sitting here playing with this app, I'm getting impressions as long as I'm sitting on this. It's not distracting from the user. Because, again, you're not getting paid on click-through, so you don't have to say, user, I'm over here, advertisement. We're paying you based on impressions. So you could keep the quality of your app, and you can keep that experience and still make money. So we want you to think about that first and foremost. The other one, you can see here, most people say, well, that kind of out of place. But you can still see it's lined up evenly with the margins, the edge, the left, the right. And so it's not, again, it's not in the user way, it's not really distracting from your content. It kind of feels like it fits in. Although me personally, I still don't like this, but it's still a good experience versus other things. So when you think about other ways like this one, you can see the difference. It's not lined up. It's just like I just thought about it at the end and I just plopped the ad there, right? It doesn't fit with your content. So you want to kind of think about those things. I mean, those are simple things, but it makes a big deal about how people review your app and how they look at your app. So use your real estate wisely. You have a lot of real estate. We have a lot of different ad unit sizes. So to your point of switching them out, because you can see the difference between your little banner ad at the bottom versus a 300 by 250 versus a 160 by 600. If you're trying to rotate those out, you're actually going to be changing your content around because you still want to make sure it fits and flows within your content.
I was referring more to this using the same ad size but changing this type of ad, going from an image to a video.
You can't control that.
Well, I know, but if you had a different ad unit for each one and then you just remove one and add another.
So, all right, so great point. Let me just make sure I understand it. So when you go create ad unit sizes, you have application and then you have ad unit sizes. So you're saying, I'm going to go create 5 300 by 250s and they are going to have different ad IDs. That may not change your story because I'll tell you how. What happens is it's going to be a campaign running against that. So if it's a campaign running against 300 by 250 and you send your application ID and ad unit ID to our server and send a request back, you're going to get that ad. Then if you're saying, oh, well, I'm going to go change it, you may not get a different experience. You may get the same ad. But with that same ad unit, I'll talk about how you can do refresh to get your impressions up and also make a call to get a different ad if a different ad is available. But you don't control if it's a banner or text or image or ad rotator. We control that.
Like the ads with video or with full screen image, those are completely different types that you select when you.
So those are different ad experiences.
Yeah.
You do not control those. So all you control, again, is a size, your application ID, and ad unit ID for that size. That's it. So it's empty space right now. So like he's saying I get a no ad, and that means he gets nothing. He still have that empty space there. We're not sending him anything back. So
No, but those are only the test ones.
that's only test. And the only reason we do that just so you can see the difference. That's just test. Yeah. So add unit IDs, when you do it in Pub Center and go live, it doesn't map to video, it doesn't map to full image, it doesn't map to video and full image. So correct. The test ones is strictly just for development. So you can kind of see how users interact. So because there's a lot of things that people are not doing. So like you can suspend an ad. You can see if the ad is engaged. So that's why we have all the different test modes also. It's not just, oh, let me see how this look in my app, but it's also to see if a user's in there watching a video and I want him to do something else, like can I see if he's engaged in the app before I suspend that ad and then have him do something else? So it's things like that. So that's the other reason we have the test code. So you can test all those different scenarios, because if it's just a full out image, the chances of you saying, oh, he's doing something in it, you can say, I'm gonna suspend that ad and pull it down and have him go back to my app. Versus if he's watching a video and he's in the middle of the video, you can see he's engaged. And then you want to see when he's not engaged so you can take him out of the ad and put him back in your app, right? So it's things like that. So I can see how that's confusing. We should get that's a great point. We should get some clarification documentation on that.
I still don't quite understand how it affects the CPM. We put out an ad, right? I mean, we put out the ad unit. I mean, I as a developer, I have no say about what CPM I'm going to get, right?
That's correct.
You guys decide it, right?
So, yes and no. So, we decide based on what the advertisers want. So the advertiser is going to come to us and say, we want to run this campaign. This is what we want to do. And that kind of decides CPM. Because they're going to come back and say, we want X number of impressions on this. And so then we share that love across all of the apps out there. So let's just take, for example, the Bing ad that you guys were saying. So say we went work with the Bing team. The Bing team said, we want 1 million impressions, and we're going to pay you X dollars. So that came out to be, say, $2 per for CPM. So that's every 1,000 impressions, that developer get $2. So, but they only want to pay up to 1 million. So once they hit that 1 million, that campaign is done, right? But if they got all of that 1 million with you for the $2, you do the math, that's how much you get paid after we do the split.
The thing then I'm confused now, because I see that same ads every day, but the CPM seems to be changing every day. How does that come to play?
So there are thresholds that advertisers could set based on impression levels, like a tier. So you could see CPM fluctuate based on, again, this is all on the sales side. I am not the sales side guy, and they probably be shooting me for even talking about it. I'm more on, hey, Mr. Developer, this is what you need to do, and this is how we serve ads. But when you try to figure out CPM, people look at it and they look at different pricing. It's also about impressions, ad unit sizes. A lot of those things play in the mix, and then it's about what that advertiser wants. So I don't control CPM. We try to set the bar high. That's why we create experiences versus a banner that you click and you go to a web page, right? So that's kind of what we try to do. We try to influence great ad experiences. So those are the things I do work with our team on. We try to create all these unique ad experiences. So what you got to think about is, here's a good way to look at it. There's car dealers, right? There's Nissan, Toyota, Audi, BMW, Mercedes. Let's say, and there's Yugo. I don't think those exist anymore, but I couldn't think of a lower grade car. What is a lower grade car now, like a Yugo? Are you guys all familiar with a Yugo? But anyway, that's like an old car that was like $2,000 you can go buy. It's a little bucket thing, right? So that's the ad experience you get today, is a Yugo. Because all it is a banner ad. You click on it, the user leaves your app, and they go to a web browser. Those are cheap. Those are cheap for anyone to create. I can go create one and have it T-shirts or whatever and click and you come to my website. That's cheap. You're going to get below $1 CPM, period. It's going to be cheap. Now, when you talk about adding the ad rotator examples like I was showing you with images, pictures, and videos, that takes a lot more because now I want high quality resolution images. I want video. I want a full video. So you can see the creative to go behind to make just an image versus the creative to go behind to make that full experience. So now you can see the CPMs are different. So that's kind of where we try to go to advertisers and say, look at the great experience we can create, and it's a recall. So remember I said it's the recall. So when you think about people clicking on just an image and going to a browser, how many people go recall that advertisement? So good example, if you look at Super Bowl, NBA, playoff games, the Final Four, all those, and you look at the advertisement that's going on during those games, those are memorable advertisements that you're going to remember. You're going to recall those. You're going to be telling those stories, right? So that's what we're creating versus just a banner text ad. You click and you go away. I'm like, yeah, I think I went to the Lego site. I can't remember. Versus, oh, yeah, I had that great experience with Ford, and I was able to go around and see the 3D image. That's what they pay for. That's where you get the higher CPMs. So does that kind of help? But you have no control. I mean, yeah, you have no control. But let me take that back. I'll take that back. Let's talk about that for a second. You have no control of the price setting. You have no control of what we send. You have all the control in the world of how many impressions you get, how people are using your app, how great your app is, and how they're engaging your app. So if you're not successful, when he talked about analytics, that's your friend. That tells you how people are using your app. That tells you where people left your app. That tells you where they're spending all their time at in your app. That's where you then go and say, hey, this is where I need to place advertisement. This is where I need to make changes in my app. This is why I need to add new features to my app and things like that. So you kind of have a control, but you can't control what my baseline CPM is. But you can kind of control, like, can I get more impressions, right? So I'm going to get to that real quick. Any more questions on that piece?
Yeah, when you set up an ad unit, you pick a category. What is that used for?
That's mapped to the Windows Store category.
Okay.
And so people do buy based on categories. So like, great question. So if you look at the Windows Store categories, if you go into Windows Store categories, these categories are put in place for a reason. So remember I gave the example for Rolex watch. Rolex is not going to come to, where's game? They're not going to probably come to game and social, right? What's the chances of someone that's playing a game that's going to buy a Rolex watch, right? So that's kind of what the categories are for. So when you think about categories, advertisers also know this. Advertisers know user base. Advertisers know who's going to be in a cooking app versus who's going to be in a game. Advertisers know who's going to be reading the Wall Street journals and things like that, or New York Times, who's going to be reading USA Today versus playing a game. So that's what the categories are for. So again, it's also based on your app too, because your app, like games, there's only certain type of advertisements that can go into games versus into business apps and versus into health and fitness and things like that. So you kind of got to think about that also.
Is there any enforcement that goes into, like, if you publish an app and say shopping, but you set up your ad unit for games, like, will it serve you games ads?
Question in the back.
Can you filter within categories? So like if you're in entertainment, you're getting entertainment ads, movies versus books, or types of movies versus other.
Can you, the developer, filter?
Yeah. I mean, can you target ads to people in your app, or does that?
At this time, no. You, the developer, cannot target ads. Keep in mind, we own what we're sending you. And what we do is we say, okay, this is a movie app. So, because it's hard to, movie is probably a bad example because, to be honest with you, all kind of advertisements show up in movies. If you watch TV, you see all kind of advertisements. That's the number one advertisement channel right now, is putting it in between shows. And they advertise everything from sleeping pills to health pills to workout videos, right? But now,
like entertainment,
so
like
we
chick flicks versus horror movies.
Yes, so you from the developer, you cannot control, but us from Microsoft, we can control.
So, question. Does the amount of downloads you have or the number of impressions that you've previously gotten affect your CPM rate at all?
So let's talk about CPM rate versus my overall amount of money I get. CPM rate, no. Keep in mind, CPM rate is, again, all driven by advertisers.
Right.
But
based on, like, you had 1 million downloads, so the advertisers can give you more money.
No, because they're not going to know about you, the individual. Okay. They're not going to know about you, the individual. So they're not going to say, no, John Paul app is where all my impressions came from, right? We do run of apps. Meaning it could go, so like, for example, he could see the same advertisement that you will see, he may see the same advertisement you see. So we're not gonna know, the advertiser's not gonna know. We'll know, you'll know. So when you say my CPM level, again, you have no control over that. That's a set price. And it could change based on day. So again, what you gotta think about is a campaign. When you run a campaign, and say I'm gonna run a 30-day campaign, you're gonna, I'll give you a bad example. Let's remove advertisement. And I hate to use this as an example, but it's true. You know, when some, like, what's this place that's the people looking for people, the bad people, Crime Stoppers, right? When Crime Stoppers first start something, they'll start out with $1,000. If they didn't get anything in 7 days, they may increase it to $2,000. If they didn't get anything in 3 weeks, they may increase it, right? So the same thing from an advertiser perspective, they say, okay, this is a shelf life. We're running this campaign for 30 days. If I don't get the projections that I wanted in the first week, maybe I need to increase like something so they'll come back and they may want to increase their reach. So that's the same thing, right? So like somebody was asking why I see CPM change a day and stuff like that. It's because people set thresholds, right? That's the change. But you, again, the developers, not the ones that control that. That's kind of all just automated. Again, from a developer perspective, the only thing that you need to think about is ad unit size, going to the Pub Center, creating your ad unit sizes, and integrating it in a nice way in your app. It's really just that easy. And then just kind of work it. Placement, where you want to put it at, doing multiple levels. If your app goes deeper, putting the ads in multiple levels. Those are the things that you as a developer, designer want to think about. Wrapping your head around trying to figure out, ooh, how much eCPM this one advertisement is going to place, do not even go there because you don't control it. I'm in an advertising group, I don't even know, right? That's a whole separate team that's going out and selling. The thing that I try to tell you is the best way to try to think about your app is from analytics. Once you got that data, I can work with you and say, you should put an ad here, 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 based on what user is going to be. Because the beautiful thing of it is, it's impressions, not click-through. No user action is required except to be in your app. And you want the highest traffic part of your app. And the best way to do that is find out analytics what people are in your app. That's really what you could do as a developer. Does that help? So any more questions about sales stuff, I'm going to not talk about them because I'm trying to help you as a developer to think about how you can use what you can use because you can't control that. You know, you can't control GoDaddy is going to go buy this campaign like they do with the Super Bowl, right? That's just the luck of the draw where people are going to buy it. Our sales team is trying to do that. The other thing that we try to tell you, again, you can see, again, the Halo ad just fits with the content. It blends in. So you just try to think about how to integrate different ad unit sizes. But the main point that I want to bring home to you, again, using the grid layout, you can see is integrated into the content. So I showed you guys all different types of sizes and how they fit with the content and how it just looked like it just marries your content, is flowing with your content, is not out of the way, is not distracting the user. And again, if I'm using this app, I'm still doing what I need to do. I'm reading this, I'm scrolling the content, and I'm still getting an impression. So you can control how successful you are on advertisement if you place your ads in the right place, because it's all based on impressions. So that's the one thing to think about.
Time that the ad has to be up for that impression count. For example, if you put it...
No, once it's on the screen, 60%.
Like
so
on a loading screen of a game, which and it loads like in 2 seconds and it tosses away. Does that count?
Let me just make sure I understand. So if you have it, so first of all, you shouldn't have it on the loading screen. The store should deny you. If I'm thinking of a loading screen like my app first launching.
Say you're transitioning in a game.
Okay, so you're saying you got it, then you're dismissing and hiding it? That's a great question. Let me find out for you on that. So give me your contact, because I'm not sure if there's a short time cycle of like 2 seconds, but I know once it shows on the screen 60%, it counts it. But how fast that is, I would say it is counting, because how it works, but don't quote me on this, but because how it works is you setting a space in your app, in your real estate, and that space is marked with an application ID and an ad unit ID, and it's firing off to our server and sending the request back. So at that point, it's counting as an impression because it showed up on the screen to make that call. So that round trip, if your ads show up, it should be counted. But the thing you got to think about, did the trip complete? Like making your call and then coming back, 2 seconds may be really fast, then it may not be, just depending on where your user's at for internet connectivity and if the ad actually fully rendered and before you're dismissing it. So you could be losing impressions. So that's why I said don't quote me on it, but I'll try to find out.
There's a confusion between like the way Windows Phone does the ad refreshes, because those are based on time.
We have some based on time. That's refresh. He's talking about first load.
Percent you're saying is actual display screen.
That's correct.
Size, right?
That's display.
So like if it's a 250 by 250, however pixels is 250 times 0.60 is
60% on the screen. But so again, what he's saying, so when I'm scrolling, so if I'm scrolling here, so you see how my ad is showing up. Right. If I got this on 60%, it's an impression. It's going to count. But so he may be dismissing too quickly because he's suppressing his ad. Yeah. He's hiding his ad versus waiting for it to load. And then we'll talk about the differences of refresh. Like on Windows Phone, I think when they first did it, I don't know what it is now. I think I was talking to someone in the back where people was able to refresh.
Yeah, however many seconds you
yeah, we have some of that on Windows 8. So I talk about the limitations. It's not the same as phone. And a lot of people make that mistake and they get in trouble.
On an app like this, you can pan left to right or right to left.
Yes.
You have an ad right here. If there's another ad 4 pages over and you're panning, does that count as another impression?
That's another impression. Correct.
An ad here and an ad 4 columns over, and both of them would show up on the screen at the same time. Is that 2 impressions?
So I'm going to address that for you in the demo. Let me get through this, because how long do I go till?
You're good. You've got quite a bit of time. So
oh, man. Okay.
It's your call.
All right. No, I'm just kidding. So let me get through this, and then I'll show you to answer your question. So, because I want to get to this slide. So, because he hit on a good point, we do frown against this, where you're stacking ads. So you see I have the banner ad, and then I have another ad. We do have people monitoring for that, and it will be considered abuse. So I would tell you to read the usage policies and the rights of how you can use that. Now, that's not the same as what you're saying. So I'm going to show what you're saying. But that we do frown on, so we don't want you having multiple ads like that. Because you can see it's not panning, it's just the screen, and now it's kind of tacky. Your user's not going to be happy because they're going to be like, why are you throwing all these ads at me, right? And then it's just kind of out of place. It's just weird. So don't do that because you will get in trouble for that. The other one is, again, another one example. You can see how they have an advertisement here, advertisement there. Don't stack ads. So we have a 160 by 600. Some people, their excuse is I stacked a 300 by 250 and a 300 by 250 because I wanted to make sure it fit and mirror my content. That's stacking 2 ads. We'll come back to, well, no, we got a 160 by 600 that can do the same. And you can kind of put a little buffer around the ad to kind of do the border so it fits with your content. So we don't buy that, right? So don't overuse, oversaturate. Now, let's talk about the no ad and the fill rate. So I don't know any network out there that has 100% fill rate. Again, one of our things is we're onboarding a lot of advertisers and we're onboarding a lot of developers. And Windows 8 is new. So we're kind of doing this little cycle of trying to get caught up, right? Now, what we do try to tell people to do is there's 2 cases where you get no ad. Is one, your ad unit at that point is not running the campaign. So you can reclaim that space and put some of your own content back or do something else. We do not want just the empty space. And I'll show you an example. I shouldn't do this, but I am. I just hope he doesn't see this recording and yell at me. So you can see it's very obvious that that's supposed to be an ad. That's supposed to be an ad. He has a bug in his app. It's not that there's no ad. And I'm working with him to fix his bug in his app, right? But that's still the same of not getting a no ad experience, right? You don't want that. That just makes your app look all misplaced and out of line. So kind of reclaim that space and do something else with it. Part of that is a fill rate issue because it's not at 100%. So how many of you guys familiar with fill rate? Okay, so I'll hit on that. But you had a question first.
That was the question.
What is fill rate?
Yeah, and how
Okay.
do I
So it's pretty much based on, is the best way to explain it is there's supply and there's demand, and they're at par and even. Meaning everywhere that I have an ad request, I'm sending an advertisement, so that's 100% fill rate. Meaning for every ad unit size that we have available, for every developer out there that has that ad unit sizes in their app, and for every one of those ad units that's making a call to us, we send in a successful ad return. We do not have 100% fill rate on certain ad units and categories. That's what they're saying. So they get a no ad.
Confuses that if I don't see an ad, I'm not sure whether it's because of the fill rate issue, or is it because of a bug in my code, or is it because of a bug in the ad control itself? So how do I?
We have error codes, and I'll show you those different codes that you can look for and capture, and you should. And I'll tell you about 98% of people are not doing a lot of the things they can do to be very efficient with leveraging the ad platform. One is the refresh, and I'll talk about that. And then one is just error handling and reclaiming your space and sending another call to the ad server, and then receiving an ad unit request, things like that. So it's just different stuff. Now, bug in code, you could test. There's ways to test that. This topic wasn't really on that, but you could use Fiddler, and it can kind of tell you if you're getting request calls back and stuff. The other one is just doing an error code, and you can kind of see if it's just bugging your code. But I'll tell you, it's probably could be a combination of a lot of things. One of them is network connections and things like that, lag, because I have people who are trying to do creative things with like flip view controls, and they're trying to load an ad on flip view controls and stuff like that. And if you think about how the ad unit works, it's making a call back and forth. That means they're literally trying to load stuff instantly. And so you could have issues with that. So there's a lot of best practice that we could talk about on that.
In the manifest.
That's correct. It should be enabled by default, unless someone go remove it. So whenever you create a Visual Studio project, that should be enabled by default. That's the only capability that's always checked, and you do need that. So
the user go to your app, modify your XAML file, remove the ads.
So you said, is it possible to?
The user go to, after install, go to installed folder, remove the ads from your XAML file. You still open it, there's no ads.
Is there a XAML file in the package?
Yes. We'll table that one because I'm not going to say with a sophisticated user what they can and can't do, but just a regular user, no. But people doing hackish things, anything is possible. I'm not going to address that. You have to kind of, we can talk about that one offline.
For about 2 weeks, I was not using the test unit IDs. How likely is it that you guys are punishing me for that, for running from the same machine, calling for the other ads for many hours?
In development? Or, ooh, yeah.
I fixed it, sorry.
That could be a case because what we do a lot of different things. We have the P support team, which is a huge organization, so there's free support for anyone that's having issues with advertisement. They do monitor certain things like that, and we do run reports to talk about impressions. And then if we're going to look and we don't see that app in the store, then yes, stuff like that could happen to where they could kind of suspend or stop calls from your application ID and stuff like that. If you just having issues not getting ads now that it's in there, you could send an email to P support and they can do research on that. That's a great one. Please use the test ads because you're taking away from yourself if your ad is not public, published, because it's not going to be a tie-in to like the store and all of that. So definitely use the test ads for development purpose. And I'll talk about those a little bit. So you can see again how there's no ad and how it just kind of makes your app look not as great, but considering that you got the grid tiles, you could say, hey, there was only 3 content things I pulled in anyway. But if you have more that showed up, you can kind of see how it's different. This one, don't try to say, ooh, let me put this ad in front of the user, because you can kind of control some of the ads to kind of make them have focus in front, like in XAML stuff. Don't do that, right? Because it's not all about click-throughs. You don't have to put it in front of the user. Just having it integrated into your app is an oppression. So don't distract your user from your app, because I'll tell you, I will uninstall your app real fast. And I guarantee you a lot of other kids will, a lot of other people will. If they go into your app thinking they could do something else and you're throwing this in front of them, they're going to get frustrated with you and they're going to uninstall your app. You're going to get a bad review, and then it's going to stop your downloads. People are not going to do it. So you have to think smart about it. All right, so let me just show a couple of things that I want to show. So let me just show you how easy it is to do the Ad SDK. I know we say like 2 lines of code. It really is 2 lines of code. I just kind of broke it up. The first thing that you're going to do is add this is XAML. You're going to add the reference to the namespace. So I can use the namespace for the Ad SDK. And I'm only doing this for people who haven't implemented. And then I'm just going to make a call. Again, here, if you see, let me just make this. You can see here I'm just making a call to my application ID. And by the way, this is the test code, the test application ID, and the test ad unit ID for 250 by 250. And so you could do this. And that's literally it, besides making a reference. So if I go into reference and I hit add reference, all I have to do is just check the Microsoft Ad SDK. That's it. And in XAML, if you go to the toolbox, you can literally just drag over the Ad SDK. Now, go ahead.
How do you get the ad unit ID? Unit ID?
Okay, we'll talk about that. So this is test. But in Pub Center, I'll show you how you go into Pub Center, you create a user, and you create your application ID, and you create the ad unit ID. And so when you go into Pub Center, there's 3 things that you're going to have to think about. And it's kind of weird, because if you don't specify height and width, you won't get an ad. You have to specify height and width. You have to specify the application ID and the ad unit ID. So, and I'll show you that in Pub Center. But see, when I run this, again, this is a blank application, so I will share this with you. These are samples that we have on the site. How easy that I just told you, and I know this is being recorded, but I'm just going to try to be honest. How easy that I told you that it was to do that with a couple lines of code, really it is for the ad implementation portion. It's literally me making a reference to the namespace in XAML, and then me putting in into the grid and the tags and all of that, the application ID. And on, so you can see here, it goes to a browser. That's just one of our test ads. If I go and do this in HTML, again, it's going to be easy. I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to make my JavaScript reference to it, and I'm just going to do a div tag. Same thing. I'm going to do the application ID, add unit ID. Those are the lines of codes that you add to actually implement it. Now, mind you, I did this in a blank app. 100% of developers are not going to have a blank app. So that was easy for me. And if I started a blank app for XAML and go to toolbar, I could just drag it over. It'll make the reference for me. It'll give me a test ID and application ID, and then I can replace that, right? But 90% of people are not going to end up with a blank app. So you got to think about, how do I actually integrate this into my content? How do I add this like in my grids if I'm doing XAML? How do I put this in my HTML if I'm doing div tags and things like that, right? So you got to think about that. So I know we say it's very easy, but in all reality, it is. But it depends on how complicated your application is. So I'll show you another sample. Let me just make sure I don't close the wrong one. So this example, actually, let me just show another one before I go there. So I did this in HTML5. So you can see here is auto refresh enables equals true. So this is where I can control on add refresh. I'm making a call saying my add refresh, and I'm logging it. So I'm going to show you that. So let's talk about the refresh. If auto refresh enable equals true, that means it's going to auto refresh. That means we're going to automatically control it. And that's going to happen every minute. So every 60 seconds, we're going to make an attempt to refresh your ad. So let me just run this. So you can see here, I have auto refresh enabled, and you can see my refresh count. And so I'm just kind of wait for 60 seconds. But that's a new impression. So every time it refreshes. So just remember I was telling you I'm playing a game. So just imagine I'm playing a game here. It's this black game, trying to find something on the screen. No. And I can't find it. So just imagine if you have something, you tell a kid to find something on the screen, how long they're going to be looking like, where's Waldo? And they just looking and looking. There's an app idea. Wow. So long as they're sitting here, it's going to do an auto refresh. And that's going to be a new impression. So that's auto. So what do you guys think of that? That's pretty much probably what a lot of people are using, right? All right, so, wow, that was a long 60 seconds. I hope that's working, right?
I'm guessing there's no way to change it from 60 seconds to like 30 seconds.
Oh, it is too. But we got still 60 second word. Holy cow, I thought I would talk longer than that. All right, so any questions so far, besides if we could change it? All right, so that was 60 seconds. So it was enabled to true, so I'm just going to check this, and that's now going to set it to false. Now I can actually do a refresh every 30 seconds. And people say, wow. So now instead of getting one impression in a minute, I can get two. No, you can't do 2 seconds, and no, you can't do 10 seconds like you do on the phone. We have 30 seconds. Now,
It doesn't help.
It doesn't help?
Yeah. Doing 2 seconds refresh. Like
Yeah. Great. So I think it was, let me see if that was 30 seconds. So here, it wasn't 30 seconds, but you can see here I'm clicking. Oh, it was 30 seconds. But you can see here I'm clicking, and you can see it's telling me no, it's not refreshing. So you cannot do it any more than, like I can't do it in 10 seconds, I can't do it in 20 seconds. I can do it in 30 seconds. So you can see it refresh. So I give it a little more time, and then I'll do a refresh again, and it go up to 4. So
we need to have our own timer for 30 seconds to do the refresh ourselves.
yes. So you can go set is auto refresh enabled to false, and then you can kind of code and say call this on ad refresh, because there's an on ad refresh, and I'll show you guys those functions and events that you can call, and you can be refreshing it. Now, here's the beauty part of that. That's per ad unit ID. So if you got 15 ads, you can refresh all 15 different time cycles at 30 seconds. That's not me refreshing all of them in one app. So that's each ad unit ID. So that was probably about 30 seconds. So if I refresh, now it's 4 times, right? So that's one way of looking at it. And so you can see here, this is just one ad unit ID. And I'm saying it's, of course I have this to false, but I just built that just so I can show people because they didn't believe it. On ad refresh, and I'm calling my ad refresh. So that's kind of some of the ways that you could do that. Questions on that?
Yeah, so if you are not serving an ad, if you get the no ad available thing, can you like force a manual refresh and hope you get
yes.
time? Okay.
Only in 30 seconds. So that's the other part I was like, God, that's great. Let me address something, then I come to you. Now, that works too, because a lot of people say, okay, I didn't get an ad that time, so let me just issue a command and do a refresh, and you probably come back with an ad. I can't tell you how all that works on the back end, but yeah.
Do you have to wait 30 seconds?
Yeah, I have to wait 30 seconds. But what you can, let me try that on a no ad serve. I don't know if I ever tried that. I would think it would, because you never received the ad, so it never completed your request. So I think you could do a refresh. I don't know if you can spin it in a loop that much, but I'm gonna try that. I'll test that out. That's a great one. But you should be able to submit a refresh to see if you get another ad. And now I don't know if you can keep just refreshing it in the loop till you get one, because you may say, oh, you're not getting one because there's no campaign too. So, right?
So 2 questions. One, I heard that in the latest version of the SDK, you don't see ads when you're local. Is that right? When you're just doing it when you're a developer, or do you still get ads served to you?
I'm local. I mean, do you mean if I'm not connected to the internet? As long as I'm connected to the internet and I'm using the test ads, I could.
What if you're using your own ad unit? You're not using the test ads.
Okay, so you may have that problem. So that's what he was just talking about in his test environment, in his dev environment. He was actually using what he created in Pub Center. So they may go in and see those requests, and they may suspend, so you may not get anything. But it's best to do this because you're guaranteed to get an ad to see how it works in your app. What you could also be running into when you're doing dev work and using your actual Pub Center, you could be also experiencing a no ad scenario. Okay. So that's why we tell you to use the test ones too.
Okay, and then I Notice that in the SDK documentation, it says that the normal refresh rate for interval is 30 seconds. So if you're using auto refresh, it will be 30 seconds, is that right?
No, auto refresh is a minute.
Well, because then it says if the user is on a metered network,
It's a minute.
can be detected, then it will be a minute.
Yes, so let me clarify that. So that should be updated. So if you're doing auto refresh is going to happen at a minute. If you're on a meter network, it's still going to happen at a minute. If you're doing manual refresh, you can choose whatever time you want, 30 minutes and greater. 30 seconds and greater. If you're on a meter network, that 30-second rule is not going to apply. It's still going to go to a minute. Because on a meter network, it'll be a minute. The only time you can go below a minute to 30 seconds is if you're manually doing refresh. So the other thing a lot of people do too, based on their app, they'll do a longer refresh because they're not really worried about impressions that way because they're getting enough impressions. So they may delay the refresh. The other thing is some people do a refresh because if they suspend and then they do a resume, they may shoot a refresh command too, depending on how they trying to control their app and their user and stuff. So like in your scenario of the game, instead of dismissing right away, you may want to do a suspend and then a resume and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different events and functions that you can use.
So are you pretty much always better off just using your own timer and putting it at 30 seconds to effectively double your impressions as long as they're not a metered connection? Because that's something I looked into and I read all that when I made my app, but I stuck with the auto refresh just because I wanted to be sure everything was going to work. But through testing, the timer was refreshing the ad every 30 seconds, so I didn't have any issues with it. So you're just better off going that route? Is there any downside to it?
Yes and no. There's downside. It just depends on your app. It depends on what you're doing. One of the downsides is you're missing a hit on getting an ad, a no ad return could be higher because you're just constantly just refreshing. But if it was me, because I'm building my app to make money, I'm probably going to control my refresh. When I do that at 30 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I actually want to be in control based on how I want to control my user experience, how I want to control my user navigating. So I'm going to try to use all of the functions there for resume is the user engaged in my ad and all of those things, just so I can control the experience of the user and not give the user a bad experience. So think about this. You saw our experiences. So say if I was on your page and I clicked it and I open up to the video and I'm just watching it. It may be a video of someone talking or dancing. I don't know. Like the Jack Reacher video or something. I'm engaged with that, but you don't check to see if I'm engaged and do a refresh. It may just take that user out of that and you just go like, whoa, what happened, right? So you kind of got to think about your user base. And if you're going to do certain things, you may want to look at all of the functionality. So like, do I do a is engaged? If the user engaged, maybe I don't do a refresh. If the user's not engaged, I do a refresh, right? So that's why it's kind of like a yes or no. But I think I would want to control my refresh.
If you're drilling down through different pages, like one of your apps, and it's less than 30 seconds, does your second page not get an ad for 30 seconds?
All right, so keep in mind, my suggestion on that, I wouldn't even worry about that. Here's why. If I'm going on different pages, I may want to have different ad units. Here's why. You want to track where users are too, right? So if I don't have analytics and I'm on page 1 and I'm using a 300 by 250 ad unit ID X, Y, and Z, on page 2 I may still use a 300 by 250, but it's going to be ABC ad unit. I can see which one was giving me the most impressions. But if you just use the same ad unit ID in each one, you have no idea where that user's at. So, yes. So let me just show you this here. So this is the default grid app. I didn't change anything, and you can see I integrated ads in it. So the question was, can I have more than one ad per page when I scroll? So you can see here, if I scroll, now I'm kind of coming into 2. And so now I have 2 impressions. Then I come and I got another one. Come on. And I keep scrolling. So now I got another one coming up. And so now I got 2. But see, they're in groups. And so how this works is, if you guys, I'm sure all you guys are familiar with one or the other, as it's XAML or JavaScript on the grid template and how they pull in data. So all I did was created a data template selector in XAML, and I'm switching between content and ad unit ID. And so I'm kind of rotating. So if you look here, I got 1, 2, then I took over 3, and I moved 3 down, versus I put it at the end on this one. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4. So you could do things like that. So in a grid template style, we're not going to frown at you, because I may end up with 12 items in one group, and my ad may be somewhere in those 12 items, right? So you could kind of get away with having them show up more than on one page. Now, to answer your question of drilling down, now, mind you, these are all the same ad unit IDs, because these are all on my hub page. So I can say on my hub page, I got X impressions with my 250 by 250. Now, if I drill down on my title page, I have a different ad unit ID, because I also have a different ad unit size. And the same thing, I chose the item collection, and I inserted an ad in the item collection. Oh, I just chose the same. This is test, so I just chose the same ad test ID. I'm not using real ads. So the chances are it could be a different ad, or it could be the same ad. But I would say it would probably be a different ad more likely, because this is a different ad unit size versus the other one. So they may have different advertisement campaigns running against them, or it could be the same.
So for one page, I can have multiple ad units, and they can same ad ID.
No. So let's just clarify. Let's not use page. I don't want to use the word page, because then you get me in trouble and you get in trouble. So that's why I stuck with the grid. So if I got a group 1, now, because I don't want to call that a page, because I'm spanning, right, content. So I don't really want to call that a page. So I'm going to say I got group 1, group 2, group 3. So what I'm saying is you can get away with putting it in groups, because you're kind of intermixing ads within your content. A page is there. And if you got more than one, you're going to get spanked, right? They're going to say no. But that's why I'm trying to just kind of politically say grids. But to answer your question, on the first one, the hub page, so if I go back to this, yes, these are all the same ad unit IDs. Because what I did is, and I'll just show you. So what I did here is I have in my standard, so I literally only have 2 ad unit IDs. One right here for my 250. And so these are all of my, on the hub page, the 250 by 250 that is showing up is all of the same ad unit ID, because I created a template for it. So I can kind of replace the grid template style, the item template control that you have by default. So I can kind of interchange them, do a template selector. And then for the other one, I did the 500 by 130. And again, it's the same ad unit ID. So I'm only using 2 ad unit IDs, but my ad is showing up in multiple places. So you could do that. Or I can get very complicated and say, well, in this group, I want this ad unit ID, and this one, I want this ad unit ID and stuff like that. But I didn't see a reason why, just for this demo, right? And so just to make it really easy and simple, I created the 2 classes. So you can see here the grid view data template selector. So this is allowing me to rotate between the grid view, the hub, between my advertising 250 template and the standard 250 template that comes by default with the grid application. And then I created the second item view template selector. So when I went into the items, I created, again, the 500 by 130, and then I rotated between the default one that you get with the grid. And so it just made it easier for me to just have those 2 ad IDs associated with it. So that answers your question in the back about having more than one ad kind of as I pan, correct, in the back?
As long as it doesn't look like you're calling them all on one screen.
Yeah, as long as I'm not stacking them. So what you can't do, so to kind of address both of them, if I put an ad here and then an ad here, that's stacking them. But as you can see, I'm just kind of panning, and I got an ad in group 3. I didn't put one in group 2, but I can easily go put one in group 2, but I kind of try to give it spacing, because again, I don't want to over-advertise to my user. So if you know you're going to have 12 groups, try to do group 1, group 3, do the odds or either do the even. I would say do the odds because you want the first ad to show up in group 1. But you can see I kind of did group 3, then I did group 4, I did 5 and 6, right? Just kind of show you that you can kind of change it up a little bit.
If your ads are like part of your game or something like that, is it okay to have more than one on the screen? In other words, let's just say that those squares were something that like a ball bounced off of. Could you have two 250 by 250 squares?
No. So that'll go back to, if I go back to the PowerPoint, that'll go back to this slide right, like right here, where you could just say this is my game, and now I got two ads. Even if I move the banner way over here. Well, what do you mean by part of the game? Because their ads are not going to be part of the game. Unless you're going to have it on the shirt of something. They're going to be very creative, and I would love to see you do that, because I've been trying.
Otherwise, they'd be blank white squares, but you just happen, but they're filled with ads some of the time.
No. No. That's me as a user. I'll stop playing your game right away. I'll just be honest. I mean, so put it this way. Try it. If you get away with it, more power to you. I mean, seriously. But what you got to think about is that something you want to play with, right? I know we're all here to make money, but let's be real and let's be realistic and let's try to be truthful to our user base, right? We don't want to manipulate our user base. The last person you want to offend is your user base, because when you think about a restaurant, it's the same thing in the applications. If you go to a restaurant and it's bad, it's horrible in the service, how do you think restaurants survive? Word of mouth, reviews, ratings. People believe in that. So if you do things in your app that a user's just going to really just be annoyed with, they're going to say it. And they're going to see ratings. They're going to see 1 star, 1 star, 1 star, 2 star, 1 star, 1 star. And that's going to stop your download, because the store itself is promoting your app. So you kind of got to think about that. So now, I don't know what your game looked like, but I'm just trying to envision it. So if,
it's just a, for instance,
I would say, my personal opinion, don't try to interact ads into your game unless we can come up. I'll give you a good example. And, well, let me hold that example. Any more questions? Let me get to something else, because I do want to have like a level of conversation where we're not recorded. So let me, we did that. All right, so we talked about Pub Center. So let me show you guys Pub Center. Oh, you know what? I'll show you guys something real cool real quick. I thought I had it on here. Maybe this is it. Nope, that's not it. I'll come back to it. I can't remember which app it was in. Oh, that is Chicago Tribune. So let me just show you how we think about advertisement. So I think this is pretty cool. So we worked with the Chicago Tribune to do this advertisement. So you can see here, when I scroll within the app, just notice how the black background changed. So now I'm on the Ford. So it's showing the leather up top. And then when I keep scrolling, if you keep scrolling, you see how the light's kind of glaring over the leather. And then when I keep scrolling, you see the background changes to where it's matching into the advertisement of the Ford. That's what we think of advertisement, right? We think about experiences. We think about how can we create something that's very unique. So then when I keep going, you can see how the green leaf come, and now in the advertisement on the Ford dash, the leaf, right? Those are advertisement experiences we create. That's a customer experience that we worked with Ford and Chicago Tribune on. But you can see our creative thinking of trying to make your guys' experiences great, to make a user have a recall, and they go like, I want to go back in the app to try to find that advertisement experience, right? It's immersive, it's engaging. So that's what we think about. So when you say, can I put 2 on the thing just to kind of do it, you kind of got to think about, how do I keep my user engaged, and how do I keep them great? And so that's something we're working on that I'll kind of share with you when we're not on online. Oh, I was going to open up a browser. Sorry. You guys got to keep me focused, because I can go off in multiple different areas. So let me just show you Pub Center. So you go to Pub Center. You can do one of 2 things. You can sign in with like your Microsoft account. That's what I chose to do, because I'm just horrible at trying to remember username and passwords now, because they're all over the place. So I'm just going to sign in. And when you get to Pub Center, this is like demo, I have 0 money. I'm not making any money. You guys need to go download my app. I don't have one. No, I'm just kidding. I will have some, and then you guys have to download. But so when you go to setup, you'll see. So for those who are familiar, you can see I can do my Windows Phone application, and I can do the Windows 8 application. And you can see here I have 2 applications. So I can actually go say register an application. And so if I actually go in and register application, I can choose, I'm going to just call it AppxFest. We're going to choose Windows 8, and I'm going to hit save. And you can see now I have my application ID. So you're going to need to make a note of your application ID. This is really how easy it is, right? Just make a note of your application ID. So then if I go back and I can go to add units, I can literally go to my Windows 8 applications. I'm going to say create an application add unit ID, and I can name it. To me, the best thing to do is kind of come up with a naming convention so you can kind of track your add unit IDs to kind of fit where you are in your application. So I always put the reference of the size in my add unit ID, and then I'm also thinking about my placement. So like in my example of the app, I had it on my hub screen. I will say, like hub screen 250 by 250, blah, 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 something. That way you just kind of know, and you can track to see which one is giving you the impression. Because if you just leave a generic name and say 250 by 250, you're going to be like, oh, which one is this? So kind of make sure you think. But for now, I'm just going to say test ID. That's kind of sad. I said all that, and then I go test ID, right? No. And then you can just choose from one of your sizes. So all the sizes we talked about, the 160 by 600, 250 by 125, 250 by 250. And then just remind me to say something about add size it when we're not recording. So I'm going to just choose 300 by 250. And so here is where you can go and set your tier 1 categories. It doesn't allow you to choose tier 2, maybe something in the future. So I can choose education and automatically choose all education. Or I can go and choose books and reference, and it'll choose all of the books and reference by default. And then I just hit save.
What's the point of the numbers and brackets, the green ones?
That's a great question. Yeah. So yeah, great. Look at them, they got it. So it's the tier 2s. But I think eventually you're going to be able to select tier 2. So then I just hit save, and then I get my add unit ID. And then you go and put these in your apps. You come back and you see your report, see how you're doing, and see your money. So somebody asked about, I think it was you, asked about how you get the application ID and add unit ID. Now, do not use this in development. So if that was my actual app, these are things for production. So we have test codes that I'll share with you. I think I have links in here. That's where you go use those test codes, and we have a long list, and you can use those and do the same thing for testing and coding. Questions on Pub Center? Hold on, the gentleman behind you, and then you.
Is there a way to see the fill rate on the website itself? Do we have any stats?
Yeah.
You get stats. I don't have any because this is just demo, but you get all kinds of stats. You can see stats and metrics. I actually been trying to get them to populate with dummy stuff, but they won't do it yet. So I'm still fighting with that. I'll come back to you, but I have him next.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that typically in an application, I would eventually have one application ID and a couple of add unit IDs. Is that correct?
Correct. So your application ID is tied to that actual application. So you're going to have one application ID, and you can have unlimited number add unit IDs. It just depends on how you want to do your app.
Right. So the multiple add unit IDs, I will have likely one add unit ID per dimension of the ad, is that? Or for the same dimension, I may have multiple add unit IDs.
Okay, so let me just make sure I understand what you're saying. So
basically my question is this, that when we were choosing the advertisement, there we just specified the dimension, right?
Okay.
720 by 320, for example. We just give the dimension. And
yeah.
Then, and then we had the add unit ID.
So let me just make sure. I'm gonna try to paraphrase, and if you caught something different, help me. So what I'm hearing you saying. So let me just give you the flow first. But here's what I'm hearing you saying is when I go create an ad unit ID, I'm creating the size, and I'm choosing the size, right? That size with that ad unit ID, once you create that size, you name the ad unit ID, you choose your category, you'll get a ad unit ID right here. And this ad unit ID is going to be paired with that application ID. So let me just make sure I'm with you. So if I have 3 applications, right, in this demo account, if I took this ad unit ID and went with another application, it's not going to work. So I got it. I'm just trying to answer it too. Now, with this ad unit ID is tied to, I think I chose 300 by 250. So that's my size. That's my category for this ad unit ID for that application. Now, if I go create another ad unit ID for this same application ID, it's going to be a different ad unit ID. It could be the same size or a different size, same category or different category for that application.
So, yeah, my follow-up question to that is this, that for the same dimension of the ad, what are the cases where I would want to have 2 different ad unit IDs?
Different categories.
Different categories, different placements in your app. If I'm on front page, back page, I mean, be honest with you, that's your choice. But what you want to do is be smart. So, okay, let's say everything in my app, whether it's on the first page, second page, third page, over here, whatever, all of the sizes, everything to make one of my ads fit into the size, everything is a 300 by 250. So all ad unit IDs that I'm going to create is going to be 300 by 250, right? If your app is like a news app with different categories like sports, or what else does a news app have? Finance, crime, or whatever, you may want to have an ad unit for that section, for this section, and for that section, right? And so you would create a separate ad unit ID. Although it's the same size, you're going to match that to a different category, and you're going to put that in different placements within your app.
So the part which I don't understand, MJ, is this, that why would I not use the same ad unit ID, given that the dimension is the same? I mean,
you can.
You can, but then, what you do is I'll be honest with you. When you're on the freeway, if I gave you a choice to get on the freeway and I told you had to get somewhere in 30 minutes, and if you get there in 30 minutes, you're going to make $1 million versus if you don't get there in 30 minutes. And I say there's this 1-lane freeway versus this 5-lane freeway. You're going to take the 5-lane because you're going to be able to maneuver traffic versus being stopped. So now think of that same concept with an ad unit ID. I got one ad unit ID, I'm in one category, and I'm blasting this all over my app. Versus, now, remember I told you advertisers are doing things based on campaign. So we got the Final Four happening now. We got the NBA Finals starting. We got baseball kicking off. So if your app had a sports session and you chose one ad unit ID and it was on education, the chances of you getting great advertisements is that. That's why you create different ad unit IDs in different categories, because you're going to be trying to mirror your content with what advertisers are going to buy. So in the sports section, I may want sports. In the education section, I may want education. In health and fitness, I may want to mirror with health and fitness. That's why.
You also wouldn't be able to determine what happened in one area versus another. If they all shared the same ad unit ID, if you went and looked in the pub center, it would report that you had this many impressions. You wouldn't know how many impressions were on this page and how many were on a different page if you used the same one.
Yeah. Now, did you want to add something extra? Because he got an app in the store. So
before we take any more questions, let's go ahead and wrap up the public.
Yes.
All right.
Cool. So let me just finish real fast. The other thing I'll tell you guys to think about, we already did this, is we have this reference. So someone was asking, how do I know and how do I handle if I get a no ad? So you'd be looking for like the code 1, and then you just do on error, do X, Y, and Z or whatever, and replace content with this banner ad or static ad or in-house ad or content, like network connection, client configuration, and stuff like that. The other things we have is we have a lot of these different methods. So we talked about the refresh. There's also the suspend, and there's also dispose and things like that. So this is all on the site for you guys to check out. I suggest using this because they come in handy in certain situations. It all depends on your application and how the user is using your application. And then we also have events. So you saw the on-ad refresh in JavaScript. I don't think I showed you error. Well, yeah, I did error handling when I was doing the ad refresh. I should have showed that. Then you see it's engage, if the user engage in the ad and things like that. Then you got properties, which we talked about. The auto refresh is enabled. You talk about the ad unit ID, application ID is suspended. Longitude and latitude we didn't talk about, but it's there. And then just resources. We have a new site, which I will show. It's actually been redesigned, which I think is beautiful. Let's get out of this. Let's do this here. And so that's the new site. I mean, for those guys who did phone and other stuff, you remember the old red and white site? Yeah, so this is way better. We got the content laid out. This is targeting only Windows 8 though. And people say, well, why did you guys break out? So we're still working with the phone team to try to do the same. And it gives you a great, pretty much everything I covered. You can find a lot of great information on here. So like some of the experiences and stuff like that, if you want to learn more, is on this site. Learning more about Pub Center is on this site. The ad unit sizes, you can see here, all of that's on the site, the captivating ad experiences. So everything I was kind of showing you is kind of publicly available. So that's it for public. If you guys got any questions on public, we can go now. Other than that, we'll have 15, 20 minutes afterwards, offline.
If it is possible, we know the user profile, the gender, ages, we understand the users.
Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap up the public portion. Again, thank you very much to MJ for coming and talking to us about the Ad SDK.
All right, thank you guys.